What's
Hello,
happening?
live. And hello, Morgan. I wasn't waiting for you. I was going live and I just figured I was going to chat audience. You popped in. So,
I like the music. I was like jamming over
oh,
here.
thank you. Thank you so much. So, for everyone joining us, thank you so much. Let me know where you're coming from to give you an idea of what was happening right there. I was waiting on Morgan because he had a call. And I was like, man, people are waiting on me. I'm just going to go live and just start talking and telling about my experience.
I love
So
it.
while my music was going, Morgan popped in and I was like, oh, look at that timing.
Just like really, just really good timing.
No, it was because I was like, oh, I know, like you said, your calls were going to wrap up at 12. And I was like, I know what that's like. People are talking. And since the topic is discovery call therapy, if it was discovery call, someone could have been like, their whole heart could have been in it.
They could have it could have been easily. So you never know.
You never know. Exactly. And that's the thing. So thank you so much for joining me. We've
Absolutely.
got someone here from Michigan, which is probably Janet. Janet's a frequent visitor from Michigan. We've got Maureen over in St. Pete. So thank you for joining. So I'm so happy to have you. I know we tried to schedule this before to talk about sales for the culture, and I definitely want to talk about that at the end and learn more about what prompted you to create that with the group, right?
Yeah.
And of course, I've got the video, which I've shared a couple times with my audience, just to get the word out there because it's such a great initiative. But I thought I'd be interested to talk about how we met, and of course, I posted about it a little bit this morning. But would love your perspective coming in, right? And I'm all like, I know you, Morgan, and you don't know me. You know who I am. So good. Share with me your perspective in how we met.
Yeah. So I'm trying to remember when it exactly was, to be honest. All the months run together, but I'm gonna say maybe it was like a year and a half, 2 years ago. And I was running a discovery call, and what I offer is sales training, so selling on that. And you came into this, it was the second call that you came into. I'd already spoken to someone else in the organization, and really the whole goal and the focus was to figure out, like, is sales training a fit here? And so when I go into every conversation, my whole goal is always to seek to understand and be as curious as I can. So when I hear certain things, I ask questions on them that seem like to be, that's an interesting question. Let me dive more into that. So that's how we met. We met through a discovery call. And one of the benefits of putting out content is that there are people who have familiarity with you once you hop on a call. If you put out X amount of content, you don't know who those people will be, but because you put out the content, it creates more frictionless relationships where people then are easier to engage with you. And so that's what happened when I first met Jen. I didn't know, that's based on the feedback you gave me after the call. I didn't know that's how you felt during the call. I was just doing my thing. But really, it's all about just seeking to understand and then making sure that you can remain curious in the things that you're doing. But that's how we met. We met on that discovery call, and nothing ended up happening from there. But obviously, we still talked from that point on.
Yeah, you're breaking up for me a little bit, but I think I
Am
got
I?
most of that. Hopefully, the audience did. What I thought was particularly interesting, okay, was when you came on with the camera on. It had been a while since I actually did a discovery with a camera, even though I used to do demos back in the day, always having my camera on and the audience not necessarily putting their camera on. But between the camera being on and that, like me knowing who you were, through the SDR Chronicles and stuff, I think I felt more comfortable. So when you were being so curious, I was inclined.
Oh, it looks like we have lost Jen here. I don't know. Can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me? I think we just like actually lost Jen. I don't know. I guess if y'all can still hear me, let me know. Put like a one and be like, "Yo, Morgan, I can still hear you," because it looks like we lost her due to connection here. So y'all let me know if you can hear me, or
Sorry, that was
yeah, it looks
weird.
like yeah, it looks like we just completely lost you. I don't know if it was your connection or something like that, but I don't know what happened. It might be connection on your engine. Can you hear me?
I, yeah, no, I can hear you. You're breaking up a little bit. This is probably worst LinkedIn Live experiences I've had yet. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
no, they can
sorry.
hear. Like it looks like they can hear me. It might look like it was on your end or something like that. So wait, I don't know what's going
Yeah,
on,
no,
but
I had to leave and come back in. So that's um so yeah, no, I was sharing, like, for me that experience was great in a number of ways, and actually afterwards when I thought about, how much I shared with you, I felt like, man, I was really sort of vulnerable during that discovery call. And so thinking back as to why that happened for me, I started like researching therapy, because that's what it felt like for me. I had Travis King on a few weeks ago and we were talking about, when you're talking to someone and you feel heard. And I thought that that was pretty interesting. So when I looked up, when you look at therapy, it's really problem solving a current situation to explore someone's feelings about it. So when you said curiosity, I thought that's interesting, because you're trying to get someone's feelings as well as to get to that current state. So tell me more about that strategy you use in discovery.
So number one, I always listen for words that are irregular. And so when people are talking with you, they mention things that are not normal in a conversation. And I'll give you an example. So if someone says, "Yeah, we have an insane growth in the next few quarters," that's an irregular word. Why did you do insane? So then I'm going to drill into that and be like, "What makes you say insane?" Right? Or someone's like, "Yeah, we have a ginormous goal that we need to hit by the end of the year." Well, why are you using the word ginormous? Like, I need to dive more into that. So this is like, it takes a while to adjust to, and it's something that you have to train yourself on. To be honest, I don't think there's a trick here. But the thing is, you have to listen for words that are irregular or just don't make sense in the conversation, right? And then you want to be like, okay, to drill more into that because it's a word that I don't quite understand why it's there, right? And again, you'll be able to pick it up. I gave a couple of examples, but obviously each conversation, that's why it's important that you have to be like listening, like intently listening, and just like really trying to focus on like what is someone saying, and then like, okay, that doesn't make sense to me because I don't know why you said that. I need to drill more into that because there's a reason that you brought it up. You aren't as comfortable with me yet, so you're not going to tell me the entire story, but there is something there. So if I drill more into it, then that shows that I'm curious and I'm paying attention. Number two is labeling. Now, this all comes from Chris Voss, is basically saying it sounds like, it feels like, right? So one thing that I do in the middle of discovery calls is I do pit stops. So if you think about NASCAR has pit stops. So typically in a race, if you go look it up, there's about 2 to 3 pit stops per race. Obviously, depending on how long the race is, there may be even more or maybe less, but typically there's 2 to 3. So in a call, I will do probably 1 to 2 pit stops, depending on how long the call is. So I'll be like, hey, so far, I just want to make sure I'm hearing everything correctly. It sounds like you're currently facing an obstacle with cold calling, and cold calling is something that you need to solve, because if you solve for cold calling, then you're going to see more conversions for your outbound touches. Like, is that all accurate? Or so? And then they'll say, oh, that's accurate. So it shows that I've been listening the entire time and it's not something random. So those are just the key factor. I mean, those are 2 key factors I'll point out. I'll let you unpack from there. But it's one is I'm paying attention to words that don't make sense or words that are irregular to the conversation. I drill into that. Second is labeling what is happening so they know that I'm listening to them, and that works across the board on anything that you're doing.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of Chris Voss as well. Like, I haven't gotten to the master class yet, but I've been eyeing it for quite a while. So, and I appreciate that, and of course, I use all the mirroring and just sort of diving deeper. When I think back to our experience, though, and when I mentioned this topic, discovery call therapy, it's because of the personal connection that I felt like I had, even though probably on your side, you were just like, what's wrong with this person? Here's an SDR leader, right? And I've got a sales leader, we're peers. And I wanted you to do more closing stuff with the sales team, the AEs, and he wants you to do more sales development stuff, but we're meeting our goals, right?
Hmm.
And so here we have two stakeholders that, typically need to agree, right, to
Yep.
move forward. And it's not because, I mean, from a SDR perspective, we had consumed like every webinar, every SDR Chronicle. Like you were like a weekly dose of our training.
Yep.
So I was like, I know a lot of Morgan stuff, right? So as we were digging into it, when you were asking me the questions, I felt like they're like that we had built a connection. Like I felt like you were listening to me, and there was something about that made it, particularly just that experience, right?
Yep.
Made me feel heard. So when you do discovery calls, is that something you typically like run into, or is that something that happens occasionally?
I would say it really there's a lot of variance to it, right? Because some people they could be having so many calls that day that it's just like another thing that they're doing, right? There's a lot of things that people have on their mind. Some calls they go extremely well. I have a process that I run on every single discovery call, and within that process, there are certain conversations that go extremely well, and there's some conversations that don't as much. I would say though is that I would say most of the conversations I have go well, depending if they end up moving forward with this or not. Because let's be honest, most people just don't know how to do discovery, and most salespeople just they just show up. So like it really at the end of the day, it's like I'm not saying it's the easiest thing in the world, but it's not that difficult to be consistent and being curious, because most people just aren't as just people, right? Like they're not intentional. They show up and they hope things happen. So like, I'm just gonna be real. Like actually it's not that difficult to stand out, because so many people just don't want to do it. Well, for whatever reason, they just don't. And so my whole thing is that I want people for me, I think about doing a discovery call, I treat it as an experience. And so I've been studying a lot about experiences as of late. And when you think about a discovery call, it's not just a call, right? Like I'm going to get a next step and I'm just looking for the outcome. It's I come into it with peace and I try to be as calm as I can, because like I'm just going to provide you the best experience that I know I can based on the information you give me. And if I'm not a right fit, it's cool. But if I am, then that's great and we can move forward. And I do get a lot of conversations that do get a lot of good rapport building, because someone has watched my content, they've seen a webinar from me, they've engaged with me in some way, and that helps me, right? And a lot of people don't post content, so it'll be a little bit different. But what I will say is it's all about going into it being like, how can I make this the best experience for the buyer? Because most buyers have an awful experience. So if you could just make it at least somewhat good, you're going to stand out pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, and I hear that. I hear that that the buyer experience, that most sellers aren't necessarily being intentional about that. And so like I think that me in that conversation, that was one of the differences, was that your ability to connect, whether that was a combination of your curiosity and your personal brand, that you were out there, someone I felt like I knew, right?
Yeah.
And so I was curious about like, so with a personal brand like that, right, where I'm mentioning your vacation and then there's this awkward pause because I'm following you on Instagram, right? Do you experience that a lot? Like this that people follow you so closely that there's a familiarity that maybe is like, whoa.
Yeah, no, I mean there is. There's a lot of scenarios that's happened where it's like, oh wait, I don't know how you know that, but that's cool. So one of the things I don't know the term. If someone in the chat can come up with this term, someone told it to me and I forgot it. But basically, when you create videos and you put yourself out there and you're front facing, people have a more of a familiarity with you, even if you have no idea who they are when they interact with you. And there's a term for it. I don't know what it is, but basically what it says, the term is that people have like this likeness towards you because they've seen you over and over again, not just via text, right? Because you could write a post and it's still cool, but a video just adds a different element of connectivity with that individual that you're watching. It's why, YouTubers and Twitch streamers, right? They have all these people that like get crazy when they meet them because like they feel like they know you because like they see you on a weekly, monthly basis. And so I do get that from time to time when people will be like, oh, like I saw this, I saw that. And for me, it's a very normal scenario because I have been building my brand for 6 years on LinkedIn. So this isn't like something I started last year, right? I'm very familiar with it at this point. I understand how to interact and engage in that scenario. Maybe for some people it's new, right? So when it happens, you're like, that's kind of weird. But for me, it's like, oh, it's just another conversation because I've been creating content for quite some time. So these scenarios aren't blindsides to me. And one of the things that I always tell people on discovery calls is, yes, you want to, and I like what, Joe Pierre here, listen, acknowledge, make a statement, ask a question. I absolutely agree with that. One of the things that I always focus on is when I'm in these discovery calls, I expect the unexpected. So sometimes people could say something that like, hey, saw you do this. I'm like, oh, cool. Like someone saw that I posted about the PS5 like a month ago. We talked about the PS5 for like 10 minutes on the call, right? So I don't know that person's going to start the call that way, but I expect the unexpected, so I'm able to adjust on the fly, which is another beneficial piece of discovery. You may have a plan going into the call, but it might go in a crazy direction, but you have to know how to bring that back so people pay attention.
Yeah, no, and I hear that. You broke up for me a little bit there, so I didn't hear the whole thing. But like, so as you've developed your brand, and granted, my brand is only about a year old, right? So we had this call, and I'm like, man, is it therapy? Is it his brand? Why did I, I wouldn't say overshare, but I really wanted to tell you my problems in that moment, right? And when I'm doing discovery calls, I appreciate it when people share with me, right? And I've noticed that since I created more of a brand, people are more apt to share, right? So wondering, like, as you built your brand, do you think that as that evolved, those discovery calls became easier, those interactions became easier?
They do, right? If I mean, it comes down to the factor of know, like, and trust, right? So you can obviously know someone, but you have to also have the like and the trust. So because of the consistency of how I put out my content, I saw, Michelle put muffins. I saw Dale put muffins. Like, so, I've been doing muffins with Morgan on Saturday for the past, I think 44 weeks or something like that now. So almost coming up on a year. So like that consistency builds trust factor in the marketplace that I continuously show up. It's not like I did it once and it was over. I'm consistently showing up when I can. And so, yeah, the conversations become a little bit easier, but also as well, like what I've also focused on is I also evolve my skills and I don't just rely on my brand. I think that's one of the biggest misses across the board is that the brand gets you inside of the door, but it doesn't keep you in the house, right? The skills are what keep you in the house. So you have to be able to build a great brand and you also have to be able to up level your skills. Both of those have to be happening. Otherwise it's you're just going to rely on your brand too much and you might have some pitfalls, which it does happen. So I say, hey, it has some conversations are a little bit easier, right? Because I built a brand and I had a YouTube channel that documented my whole journey as an SDR, and I continuously do different pieces of content for sure. But I'm also taking time to learn and block out time to go learn so I can go execute and get the results that I'm ultimately looking for. So I would say it's a combination of both. And if I focus on both, then I continuously will just get better as a whole, because sometimes people only focus on one thing. I'm focusing on bolstering both as much as I can.
Yeah. How do you make the time, right? You've got a quota, you've got, how do you make the time to focus on both and still have like I know you have a student mindset, like I like always learning, right?
Yep.
And so how do you make the time for all the things?
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm really focused on is trying to figure out where, first and foremost, you mentioned the student, because I want to talk about that, is everyone deciding where does your ego lie. So a lot of times if your ego is relying on just being the best of the best sales rep so I can get a lot of money, or I want to have a certain status, like you might get there, but along the way you may miss certain aspects of learning lessons that you just completely just didn't realize. So one of the things that I focus on is I want my ego to be focused on being the best student and scholar I can be. So I'm always continuously learning and I'm always trying to get advice and insights from certain things, even though across the board, I, have gotten great insights from people. Sometimes you might be like, oh yeah, cool. Like that's it. Like you can't do that. You always have to be growing 1% every single day. And so what I focus on in terms of my time management is I have to block things into chunks based on prioritization. So to give you all context, what I do on a day-to-day basis and what I actually have it written down in this book over here is I do prospecting, selling, deliver training. I have a podcast that I host and run. I also have a Twitch channel, which I do every Saturday at 11 a.m. I also run and host webinars, and I also create content for LinkedIn, for Instagram, and for TikToks. And then also as well, like I have a life, right? So like, I have friends I go hang out with, right? And all that stuff. So that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And most people probably only do like one of the 10 things that I just mentioned. So the only way to do it is I time block everything. So every single thing on my calendar has a time that I would do it. So I time block when I work out. I time block when I learn. I time block when I time block to go sell. I time block when to prospect. I time block when I eat. Like you have to get to that level of just time blocking, right?
Yeah.
That's all I do is just time block every single minute of my day. And that may be tedious for most, but when you have all the tasks that I just mentioned to you, you have to do it. So I get a lot of things done because I'm so in my calendar that I actually finish things at a very fast and efficient rate because I just know how long I have to do certain things. And I'm not willy-nilly. I don't just show up at the day and like, oh, I guess I got to go do some stuff today. Like, no, like I literally know from the beginning of the time that I wake up to bed, I know every single thing that I'm going to do. And I just take action within those slots. And that's how I'm able to do all this stuff.
Yeah, no, and I hear you. So Karen here says that's called parasocial.
There we go.
Is what she believes the term is. Yeah. Perfect. And then Jacqueline says, I've noticed that if you present yourself as an open, honest person, people tend to respond with the same. The calls I'm most proud of are the ones where I learn who the prospect is as a person, what matters to them. Being vulnerable can be one of your greatest assets if used in the appropriate circumstance. And I agree with that. I think, and you can tell me what you think, but that vulnerability, and when you actually can have a deep enough discussion to understand what someone cares about and what success means to them, and not just professionally, but you and I both sell to sales leaders in a lot of cases, right? And we know that sales leaders, that's a stressful job. That's not easy. That's not an easy job, right?
No.
So, if you have the opportunity to get into that deeper level discussion, it makes all the difference. So tell me, what do you think about that?
I think at the end of the day, people want to have the deeper dialogues, but the key thing is that you have to get to the point to have the deeper dialogue, right? You can't just dive into it and be like, get super personal, right? You have to build towards that. So I'll give you an example. If you hop on a call and you ask someone, hey, how's the weather? Like that's not, it's just never not going to work out. It's just not going to work out for you, right? I'm just letting you know right now, right? And so that's not really building rapport. That's building fake rapport, right? And now that person's like, here's another sales rep trying to do something. I don't want to have that vibe. So how do you do better there? So one thing that you can do is you could start off a call and be like, hey, I was doing some research on your website and I noticed that you're hiring a lot of sales reps. I noticed you have a new product update. I noticed that you're hiring a new sales leader, etc. Right? So what does that do? It shows that I've done a little bit of research about what's happening in your organization, right? And if I can show you I've done a little bit of research, that means I've now opened up the conversation a little bit more because now you're going to give me more insights because I have taken the time to learn a little bit more about your organization. And if I can find more about the person, that's great too. Sometimes people don't have a lot of things that they posted or shared, so you can't find anything. But the fact that I just shared on things I found on your website and telling you what insights I'm going to dive into fundamentally changed the conversation because now I'm not another person that's just random. Like I actually took my time to do some research and now we can dive into it and it becomes more personal. So that's the way that I go about it. I think every single situation is going to be unique because I don't think you can get super personal with every single person because some people are just going to be guarded and they're like, I don't want to do that. But you could feel it in the conversation, like how it's going on how in depth you can go and based on the rapport and what you're building there.
No, and I agree with that. You can't just dive in and say, why do you care about this for you personally? You have
Yeah,
to have
no, yeah,
built up on the conversation and when you're in a good conversation. Like people
exactly.
know,
They
right?
know.
If you're feeling like it's okay to ask it because you've actually had a conversation, then ask. But it's not until then, or you're just going to be shooting yourself in the foot. We're almost at time. A half an hour goes so quick.
It's fast.
So and the idea with this is that it's a half an hour, so it's half of lunch or a coffee, or so because you time block. I want to be respectful of your time too, right? So tell me about Sales for the Culture. I've had a couple guests come on that we've talked about it a little bit, and I showed the video. But you're the guy, so tell me about it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a collective, right? There is no person; it's a collective of people. And at the end of the day, Sales for the Culture was really built to bolster and educate a lot of people that, from the minority standpoint, to be more granular African Americans, to help them get into SaaS sales. When I found SaaS sales by an accident, so there was not purposely looking for an SDR job. I literally went to a networking event. Someone told me about SaaS sales. I didn't know what that even meant. All I knew is a company got funding and it sounded like it was interesting. That's how I got into it. But most people don't have that same event that I had, right? Right. This is not there. So because it's not there, what we're trying to do is help people that are not yet salespeople get into sales. People that are SDRs, BDRs evolve into AEs, and then if they're AEs, do they want to go into leadership, or do they want to take the next step as an AE and get into the enterprise? So we have different groups and cohorts that are really helping Black sellers across the board grow and be better at the end of the day. So if you want to be a part of it, I see that Catherine put it in there. You can definitely go check out the website. But it's been a blessing to work with a lot of people on the team, such as Jacob and Marcus and Nikki and Mercy and Roderick. Like a lot of people that are helping running this. We're definitely going to see, a lot of people come out of it with successful jobs and opportunities that they never thought of, and that's what's really exciting about it.
Yeah, and I think that's amazing. I have Juwan coming on in just a couple weeks, and
Awesome.
I just love. I love the initiative, and I love that we're trying to get more diversity in, because I think that's been a problem for a really long time. And the only way I got into software sales is from the cigar industry. I used to run a cigar bar, and the salespeople would come in and reserve my conference room for their demos, and then take their clients to smoke cigars and buy them drinks, and they were done for the day. And I was like, oh, I want to do that. What am I doing 60 hours a week in the middle of the night over here? What are you doing? I want to do some of that. So thank you so much for joining me. I thought it was a great conversation. I love to hear your insights, and I'm a big fan. I think I've already shared that. But I'm going to share with the audience the video for Sales for the Culture. I've got it
absolutely
up here. And for everyone joining us, thank you. Always appreciate folks joining for the LinkedIn Live. Next week, I've got David from 10 Down, who's going to be talking about the future of sales development. I never make it to those conferences, but I always want those insights, right? So we've gone from talking about sales development to having a seat at the table to sales development's over. Here's full sales cycle reps. And I think that the function has so much value that I can't wait to hear David's insights. And then next week also is Ladies Happy Hour with 7 amazing women joining me to talk about their mom life, being women in sales, and what that's like. So always excited to have my mamas join me, right? So thank you, Morgan. And we'll where's the video? Okay. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Absolutely.
The lack of Black representation in technology sales is well understood. Many don't know about tech sales, and others don't think that they're qualified. For those of us already in the industry, knowing this career path exists is only the first step. As Black people, we need to feel like we can be excellent, and we need to be equipped to excel. But it's only one thing to realize this problem, and another thing to do something about it. Because we value serving the community, and we know that there's power in having a growth mindset and using our voices authentically, we decided to do something about it. Through partnerships and collaborations, we've created a community, an environment that attracts those who are aligned with our mission, advocates who help empower and enable people of color to get into tech sales while supporting those of us already here. We believe